let me turn it over to Supervisor Gross to open us up with 2 minutes of introduction.
Thank you. Saif, I think this is on.
Yes, it's on.
Okay, very good. Good evening. My name is Penny Gross. I've had the privilege of being your Mason District Supervisor for the past 24 years, and I am seeking re-election to another term. I try to make a difference in people's lives every day, whether at the local, at the state, or at the national level. I am a workhorse, not a show horse, and I love my job, my district, and my constituents. I think you need to know your community well before you seek elective office. And my long record of community service as a PTA leader, civic association president, a Mason District Council, a park volunteer, a Girl Scout leader, in addition to 20 years of working on Capitol Hill. I think these prepared me to address the issues of our community. And the issues of our community are pretty much the same all the time. They don't change because they are human conditions. Education is the #1 priority of the Board of Supervisors, and you will be hearing from our school board candidates later. The economy is so very important, and I know for a lot of the folks here at Al-Hijrah, having good jobs and the opportunity for good jobs is really important, especially because of all the small businesses that are represented at Al-Hijrah. We also need housing that is affordable and accessible. We need multimodal transportation. These are all important to expanding our economic standing. And then transportation. We need more efficient bus systems that serve more neighborhoods, walkways, and trails. And I have to brag a little bit about the work that I did with folks here at Al-Hijrah to get the sidewalk from the apartment complex here to Al-Hijrah right along Route 7, and of course the crossing light that we have, the pedestrian crossing light, which took a lot of work, but we did that together. And the environment is also very important. I'm very proud of the work I've done on restoring the Chesapeake Bay and our streams, and of course clean water, clean air, stormwater management, and our tree canopy. We are making progress to resolve these community issues, and I look forward to working with all of you in the coming term to continue that work. I am your full-time supervisor. I always have been, and I always will be. No candidate for the Board of Supervisors can match my role, my years of leadership and experience at the Board of Supervisors, where I serve as vice chair. Again, my name is Penny Gross, and I ask for your vote. If you are a Mason District voter, I'm sure that there are some folks here who live outside of Mason District, but certainly I do ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you so very much.
Gary Aiken.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Gary Aiken. I'm a candidate for Mason District Supervisor. You'll know you're in the Mason District if you're in Fairfax County, inside the Beltway, south of Route 50. There's a couple of districts outside the Beltway, but most of Mason District is inside the Beltway. I'm running a campaign based on 3 planks. The first is economic revitalization. The Mason District has 4 federal opportunity zones: Annandale, Bailey's Crossroads, Seven Corners, and Lincolnia. They're federal opportunity zones because the federal government has decided that after 24 years of a lack of investment and a lack of progress, that these places need special tax incentives for businesses to thrive and tax incentives for properties to grow. I have the background and experience, 18 years in business, first in accounting, then in investments, then in strategic planning, and today I am Chief Risk Officer for a mutual life company. The second plank in my campaign is safety. We need to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe. People come to Mason District from all over the world, and protecting the religious freedoms here in Mason District and protecting your personal and environmental safety here in Mason District will be one of my top priorities. I want to make sure your kids are safe from drugs and gangs. The third plank in my campaign is budget reform and keeping your taxes low. Taxes have gone up 16% in the last 4 years. That increase is felt by you if you own property through the real estate taxes you pay, and if you're a renter, it's passed on to you through the rent. Taxes are a major driver of why it continues to be less and less affordable in Fairfax County.
First question that we want to ask has to do with development. We know that Mason District is one of the districts that's probably going to be on the list of upcoming developments as we look at some of the South County quote-unquote projects. And we've seen some of the shopping centers and other commercial establishments not doing too well in our district. So the question is, what specifically would you do to improve the development of Mason District if you are elected? And we'll start with Gary.
The first thing that we need to do is to create an environment where somebody who's going to come in and put their investment capital to work will feel confident that this is a growing and thriving place. One of the things that we have to do is we have to clean it up. Because when I go on tours of properties with developers, with people who have millions of dollars at stake, they need to know that we care about this community, and we all do. But it doesn't show when there's trash on the street. It doesn't show when the vacant lots have cars in them. It doesn't show when there's graffiti everywhere. We have got to clean it up, and one of my proposals is for what I call a Bailey's cleanup force, a professional group of county employees in uniform, constantly there picking up trash and cleaning up the area. This has been done in a number of developments in DC and around the country. And when that happens, when people have confidence that the county government has a stake in caring about the community, then business owners will also have confidence and want to invest.
Thank you. Supervisor Gross.
So you want to keep taxes low and increase positions in the county. That's a tough thing to do. Do the math. It doesn't work. The retail is changing across the country. It's not just a Fairfax County situation. It is a national situation. But some of the things we've been doing in Fairfax County and in Mason District very successfully has been repurposing buildings. The vacant buildings that we've had, look at 5600 Columbia Pike, which is going to open as a live-work location with apartments and office in November. That's very exciting. We changed an office building into an elementary school just across the street up at Seven Corners. Remarkable, award-winning building that we were able to change from an office building to a school. We are going to be looking for more of those opportunities because we can repurpose buildings. It is a greener way to approach our development. We also, I'm very proud that all of the shopping centers in my district have been redone in the 24 years I've been in office. Some of them now are being redone a second time around. We actually do have a very robust customer base here in Mason District. Sometimes with retail changing, we are at the mercy of corporate decisions made elsewhere. But we know that this is still location, location, and location. And I think that that will bode well for us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So the second question is, talking about development, one of the issues that people face in this district as well as across Fairfax County is an issue of affordable housing. Now, we know that with development comes higher housing costs, and that is something that residents of this district are facing as well as other districts where people can't afford to live in Fairfax County, whether it be the property tax because their values have gone up so significantly,
or whether it be rents, for example, in our county. What would you do to make more affordable housing available in Mason District? We'll get to it. I know what you want to add. I'm going to get to your question later, but go ahead, Penny Rose.
We have a lot of affordable housing in Mason District, and some of it is county sponsored, and some of it is housing choice vouchers and income-based, but we do have quite a bit. We can do better in all of our planning. When we rezone properties, when we have comprehensive plan changes and then rezonings, the county requires a certain percentage of affordable dwelling units. We also are working on workforce dwelling units. Those are very important. In the Seven Corners plan that we adopted a few years ago, there is a lot of workforce and affordable housing included in that. It requires private investment. I think the location of Amazon in Northern Virginia has solidified the idea that Northern Virginia is a good place to do business. I think that housing will follow. I've already talked to Amazon folks who are interested in helping us with keeping housing affordable. We're in a great location in Mason District. We've got some land left, but we need to go up, and that's a little more expensive construction, but when you increase the density, you have the opportunity to provide more units that are affordable.
Mr. Aiken.
One specific thing that I want to do is in the southeast quadrant, take the land that's slated for a government services building and where there's currently the interim park and sell that to a developer or contribute the land to the development in exchange for additional what I call workforce units. Those are 60 to 120% AMI. One of the things that we have here in Mason District is a lot of affordable housing. And what we need to remind ourselves of is that for a community to be complete, we need to have a diversity of income as well. So the thing that we haven't built here in Mason District is more luxury, more housing units for people who have a good job or a two-income family. They struggle to find a place to be. And so what do? They move to Loudoun County, they move to Prince William, and endure long commutes. We have the ability to create market rate housing here in the Mason District, which will then make our commercial areas, which are downtrodden, more attractive. That will benefit all of us, and it will benefit Fairfax County.
Thank you. The third question, last from the podium, then we'll open it up, is regarding board appointments to Fairfax County boards and commissions. What would you do to make sure that boards and commissions of Fairfax County are representative of the whole Mason District community? And we'll start with Mr. Aiken.
I spoke at the Muslim American Society yesterday at 2 different prayers during the midday. Each group was about 300 people. And what I said to them was, I will select somebody from the Muslim community to be on a board or a task force for Fairfax County. There are too many people in this community who have advanced degrees, who are eminently qualified, and whose expertise would be appreciated and useful to Fairfax County. And it's a shame that we have not done that yet here in the Mason District.
Ms. Gross.
I get to appoint a lot of people to boards, authorities, and commissions, and I have been for 24 years. I appointed the first Arab American woman, Helen Samhan, to the Human Rights Commission. I also appointed Daoud Karola to the Human Rights Commission. Ayman Eldarish, who belongs to this mosque, is my representative on the Disability Services Board. That's one of the biggest boards we have. I mean, one of the most important ones we have. I also have now appointed Andres Jimenez, not a member of the mosque, but Andres is now my Human Rights Commission appointee. So I've been very careful to make sure that we have a variety, a diversity of appointees to our boards, authorities, and commissions. I also appointed Abdel Rahman Hamed to the Advisory Social Services Board, and Asim El-Faki has been appointed to the Board of Equalization. So there are lots of opportunities. I must urge you, if you live in Mason District and you're interested in volunteering your time to be on a board, authority, and commission, you need to get in touch with me. I already have a couple of resumes that I've been holding on to when we get vacancies. But also, if you live in another magisterial district, get in touch with your supervisor because they have the same opportunities to appoint people as I do.
Thank you. I have received a question from someone in the audience. Granted, this is a question that has to do with Providence District, but it is a question that is from one of our community members that is handicapped and asks about having a difficulty reaching the bus stop 2B near the Providence Community Center. They have a hard time when they walk from Vienna to Providence, from Vienna Metro to Providence, because there is not a clear way of doing so. Is there a way that you can help to provide bus service or some sort of shuttle service from the Vienna Metro station to the Providence Recreation Center? Use the other one. Yeah, sorry.
I'm happy to talk to Supervisor Linda Smith about that. We are required in our bus stops and so forth to be handicapped accessible, and so if it is not accessible, if it is not complying with Americans with Disabilities Act, that needs to be fixed. So I'm happy to talk to Supervisor Smith about that. We've made a lot of progress, even just along here along Route 7. All those bus stops were changed to be accessible by the disabled.
Thank you. Mr. Aiken, do you want to take that on?
One of the things that I do want to do is make the county's, your interaction with the supervisor a little more interactive. One of the things that I've done on my website, which I encourage you to look at, is if you click in the Mason District section, you'll see that there's an interactive map. And what I want to do is make that map interactive with the public so that when something like this comes up, you can go in, you can click, you can type in what your issue is, and it'll automatically go into a customer relationship management database where I will then follow up with my staff on where we are, what progress we're making, and make sure that we get back to you with timely updates as to how we're solving your problem. And we also, of course, want feedback to see how we've done and how we can get better.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. Please keep your question very short and a question. You can make a statement, but please make it a question at the end so that we can get the question. And I'm going to start with Munya. I know you wanted to follow up on that affordable housing question. So,
hi, thank you so
Introduce
much for
yourself.
answering our questions. My name is Munya. I'm a member of the civic engagement team. I am really concerned about the housing in our community. It seems like almost impossible to get into the waiting list. I would like to know what's your plan to make at least give a chance to people to get into the waiting list because it's almost closed all the time. So what's your plan to make the waiting list for the housing accessible to people?
and for clarification, what Munya is asking is Fairfax County has an affordable housing program, but it has a waiting list that has been closed for a long time. It opened for a very brief period of time, I think earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken. But it's very difficult to get on that list, and we, people who have been trying to get on it are having a very tough time to do so. So the question is, what would you do to improve or to deal with the issue of the waiting list for affordable housing in Fairfax County? And we'll start with Supervisor Gross. I'm going to give you back this mic because it's still not good. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. I'm used to microphones. I've been using them for a long time. Munya, thank you for your question. You're absolutely right. We have a huge need in Fairfax County for affordable housing. We have a small amount of money, and it's all part of our federal and state and local spending. One of the things that we are doing, we are looking at for next year, is carving out 1 cent on the tax rate, not necessarily adding to the taxes, but carving out 1 cent on that for additional affordable housing. That might help. We already spend on an annual basis $138 million on affordable housing in Fairfax County. The extra $25 million would help, but quite often I think we are always going to be behind, quite frankly. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We will always be behind because the need is so great and the resources are not what they need to be. Keep trying, absolutely keep trying. We also need to make sure that people who are already receiving housing are still authorized to receive housing, because sometimes if your income goes up, you're supposed to be then not qualified for that anymore, and sometimes people who are making too much money actually are still in affordable housing. So we need to make sure we're a little better on that too.
Mr. Aiken.
I think one of the things that we need to encourage is other magisterial districts to also do more on affordable housing. Again, Mason District has a lot of affordable housing, and while the demand may be there for that, there's also demand for market rate housing. And so one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we're building market rate housing, and market rate housing that is in the affordable range between 60 and 120% for teachers, firefighters, police officers, other government workers, people who are in the early stages of their careers. We need those people to be here to start families, to build equity in their homes so that they can become vibrant members of our community and enable them to stay here in Fairfax County and stay here in Mason District and go through our great schools here in Mason District.
Thank you. We have a question in the back. Please stand up and raise your voice. The question is, what will you do for kids with disabilities? Are there programs or services or activities that the county can make available for kids with disabilities?
Saif is right. That is a question for the school board candidates. However, I will say that...
You're using the wrong mic. Let me get this out of your way. Sorry.
However, we spend a lot of money in our school system to provide for students with special needs, and some of that is children with disabilities, not just children who might have some learning disabilities, but it's with the physical disabilities especially. That program is expanding. That's one of the reasons our transfer to the school system, our monetary transfer to the school system keeps going up, because that is the area that we need to have more teachers, more resources for those children so that they can succeed. Just like every other child in Fairfax County public schools, our children with disabilities need to have every opportunity to succeed like everybody else. And I'm sorry, Ricky, I'm probably stealing your thunder, but that's really something that we work on together.
Mr. Aiken.
I don't have an answer to the question, but what I will say is I've written it down and I will take a look at it. One of the things that we can do, and outside of the school system, is SAC, after school childcare and before school childcare. So maybe there's ways that we can accommodate kids with disabilities or other kids who, making more spaces available, making more programs available. Partnering with not-for-profits, partnering with churches to see how we can accommodate that in the future. So I'll work on that. Thanks.
Abdul-Razak. So the question is, Abdul-Razak said, I live very close to here in Seven Corners, and I've been paying about $12,000 a year in property taxes. What can you do to improve that or to change that? And we'll start with Mr. Aiken, because we started with Supervisor Gross last time.
Well, the Board of Supervisors has been raising taxes. They've been raising fees. One of the things that I will be is a check on that. I will make sure that our tax dollars are being spent wisely. I will use my accounting and investment background to make sure that programs are operating efficiently and effectively. I want to bring back the independent auditor. The county used to have an independent auditor, not a financial auditor, but but an actual inspector general kind of person. And I want to put teeth into that so that we take a look at programs. And every program that Fairfax County does has an altruistic, a good intention, a good purpose. What we need to ensure is that that program, when it was put in place, must have had metrics to determine how successful it was or what we expected out of it. And what we should be doing is taking a look at, are we achieving that? If we're not achieving that, how do we bump it up? And if it's unachievable, or if it's something that's outdated and not useful anymore, then maybe we should look at eliminating it to control costs.
Supervisor Gross.
Well, we've had an independent auditor in Fairfax County for almost the entire time I've been on the board. In fact, we're on our third one, I think it is, because the previous one had retired. He had worked for us for a long time. So we do have an independent auditor and an audit committee that includes citizens on it to monitor his work. I'm curious. I want to see your house, because if you're paying $12,000 a year in taxes, you're paying twice what I'm paying, and I thought I was paying some. I'd love to see your house. We need to talk later, because it sounds to me like maybe you need to have your house reviewed for an assessment. That's a mighty fine house if you're paying $12,000 a year. We have to, our only source, the majority source of our income in the county is the real estate tax. The state really controls our sources of revenue. So we are very, very careful about the real estate tax and what the level is. I have, in my time on the board, yes, I have raised taxes. I've also lowered them. When we're able to do that, we do. We did get rid of the decal fee on the car tax on your cars a number of years ago. So we look for those opportunities whenever we can find them. But again, we live in a great community, and our taxes are what we pay for living in that community. It's tough sometimes, but I can assure you there is no line in our budget that says waste, fraud, and abuse. I've been looking for that line for 24 years. I can't find it.
Thank you. Any other questions? So the question is, again, on property taxes. Muhammad Imad said that his taxes increased from 8,000 to 10,000 in 1 year. So the question is, I want to try to phrase it in the question is, how is the county going about the assessment process? And is there a way to maybe cap the increases from year to year, for example, so someone isn't suddenly facing an untenable tax situation on their property? And we'll start with Supervisor Gross.
Thank you. Under the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Fairfax County must use a uniform assessment for all properties, and we reassess every year. Some localities only reassess every 5 years, 7 years, and then you get really shocked when it increases. But in Fairfax County, we do have to use a uniform assessment, and that is based on the sales of comparable properties. And they use, the neighborhoods are very similar. You can look online at your address, at your house, and you can click on the comparables so you can see where the values have gone up as houses have sold. There's also an appeal process when you get your tax bill that you can ask for a review of your assessment, because sometimes mistakes are made. But if in this area where houses are selling, and houses are selling for more than they are assessed for, that affects the comparables then. That affects the value. So we keep a close eye on that. We do not figure out how much money we need and then tax you accordingly. We figure out, what is the assessment, and then how can we work within those resources.
Mr. Aiken.
I want to approach that question a little bit differently, which is here in Mason District, with huge amounts of office vacancy, with huge amounts of retail vacancy, with vacant land that isn't productive, there's commercial opportunities where we should be getting tax revenue from businesses and we should be getting tax revenue from commercial properties that we're not getting our full potential. And so that lack of investment has to be made up somewhere. And for every dollar that you pay in taxes, you consume about $1.25 in county resources. For every dollar that a business contributes in taxes, they consume about 60 cents. So we need more businesses, we need more commercial activity. And when we have that more commercial activity, which has failed to materialize over the past 24 years, when we get that business investment back, then there'll be a diversification of revenue sources so that we don't have to tap your home equity to pay for our imbalances.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and say that we're going to have both candidates answer that question. So, but we'll start with Mr. Aiken. So, Mr. Aiken, the question is, what would you do differently? And then we'll come to Supervisor Gross and say, what will you do differently in your next term if you are reelected?
I think the thing that is different is our approach. The thing that's different is our experiences. I'm not a politician. Maybe I've become a politician over the past 12 months. But I've been in business. I've been in accounting, in investments, strategic planning, risk management. I know how to balance the needs of the current with the needs of the future. I understand large numbers because I've managed a $26 billion liability. I understand how we get business investment because I'm the primary lender on the DC reinvention of the Hecht warehouse property. I was the creator of the structure that enabled the first investment in the DC waterfront. I've been there and I've done it before. I have that experience. And maybe that's not exactly how, on a day-to-day basis, I'd be different. But that's the approach that I bring. That's my set of experiences and skills that I bring to the table. And I think those are skills, when the budget is now $4.5 billion a year, you want somebody with institutional experience. When the unfunded pension liability that needs to be restructured is $3 to $5, maybe $7 billion, you need somebody who understands large numbers and how that works. I think you need a different perspective. I think after 24 years, it's time for a change.
Supervisor Gross.
Yes, you do need institutional experience and leadership, and that's what you get with Penny Gross. I made a quick list of the things that we've worked together on just here at Al-Hijrah. We've worked on the parking issues many times. It's getting better. I worked with you on establishing your school on Edsel Road in Mason District. As I mentioned before, we built the sidewalk from the apartment complex to the mosque. We even had a dedication of that and a ribbon cutting because we were all so excited about it. I worked closely with the mosque after 9/11, before and after 9/11, and we had an incredible prayer vigil right here in this room immediately after that horrible, horrible situation. I think that brought the community together. People think it tore it apart. No, I think it brought it together. I really have been pleased to see Al-Hijrah working on support on suspension, the Colmore Clinic, the Colmore Cleanup. I've worked on women's issues with Fazia. We even worked with Hossein Gal on the stormwater pond in the back. Also, Al-Hijrah has been remarkably at the foundation of our kaleidoscope discussion, which was our dialogue on diversity. And, of course, the crossing signal that gets everybody across safely. Those are tangible things that we have worked on over time. There are more to do as we move forward and as the community grows. There are going to be more and more opportunities for working together. So I would say stay the course. Let's keep working together and resolving the issues that you identify for me and that I identify for you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask a question from the podium, and that is one of the issues that we intend to work on in the next few years is the possible construction of a community center. Al-Hijrah owns the property that is behind the residence across the street. And as part of that project, and I know I don't see Ma'moon here today, but as part of that project, we're looking at the possibility of putting in a full-on traffic signal. I know when the walk signal was originally put in, the discussion was whether we could time the signals between Nevius Streets and Patrick Henry Drive. But I think that the traffic is such that we've reached a point where we need to look at the possibility of putting in a traffic signal, a full-on traffic signal. For those of you that don't know, the walk signal came in after the death of one of our congregants who was actually here on a Friday night, wanted to donate to a cause and had to go home across the street to get money. And as he was crossing Route 7, he was struck by a car and was killed years ago. And after that, we worked with Supervisor Gross and others to get the signal. But I think it's coming time to put in a traffic light. Would you work with Al-Hijrah to look at the development and work on the development of a community center as well as getting a traffic signal on Route 7? And we'll start with Supervisor Gross.
The simple answer is yes. That traffic signal, that crossing light, was extraordinarily difficult to get. We finally had to go to our congressman to help move it along because the Virginia Department of Transportation really didn't want to do it. But you are persistent in getting what you need and continually advocating for what you need. Sometimes it takes years, as in this particular situation. It may take us more time, but I think that redevelopment here and what Saif was talking about in the potential for a community center and so forth on some land just to the west, that is the kind of redevelopment and density that then is very supportive, could be very supportive of a traffic signal. So yes, yes, yes.
Mr. Aiken.
One of the major issues that some of the neighbors behind the mosque have is parking. And parking is an issue all over Mason District, especially in this area, in Culmore and near Lake Parkcroft. So maybe we can solve two things by being a little creative. I think maybe when we work together on the community center, that we talk about some kind of structured parking garage. And then with the structured parking garage, which will be then maybe above ground, or the community center will be above ground, some kind of elevated walkway across the street. I know that's had problems on Route 50 at the beginning, but if we do it the right way, that could solve two birds with one stone and not impact the traffic on Route 7. So something to consider other than just a traffic light is to think bigger and to imagine a future where we're planning for the long run, not just the short run.
Thank you. Although the traffic light is important because of the traffic also, not just the people walking across the street. I'm going to, if there are no other questions, I'm going to ask that the candidates give us a 2-minute closing remarks each. Because we started with Supervisor Gross, we're going to ask Mr. Aiken to begin with a 2-minute closing remarks. And after the closing remarks, we're going to take a 5-minute break so we can set up for the school board forum. So please get some tea, get some snacks, whatever's left, and some water. But stay because we still have the school board candidates so we can get into the school board discussion. Mr. Aiken.
I want to thank Dar Al-Hijrah for being so welcoming and so gracious to me. I am an outsider, I am a stranger to your community, but every time I come in here, I feel like one of your brothers. and I appreciate that sincerely. I have never been in government before, but I want to be in government to make sure that our tax dollars are being spent wisely, and that if we are raising taxes, it's because there's no other alternative. I want to make sure that the gang task force continues to have the resources to do its good work and protect your kids. I want to make sure that we are investing in stream maintenance as an environmental safety item. And I want to make sure that we are doing what we can to execute the plan to bring economic growth back to Mason District. I have done it before in the private sector. I'm excited about the opportunity to do it here in Mason District and to lift Mason District into the place where we know it can be. And it won't get there by selecting the same leadership again. It requires new leadership, new vision at the top. And that's why I'm running, to provide that new leadership and to be a catalyst for positive change here in Mason District. GaryAiken.org is the website. I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Gross.
Thank you. Being a supervisor is a daunting task. It takes every brain cell and every ounce of energy to do it right. And to fulfill the enormous responsibilities that are placed in a member of the board for their constituents. I treasure the trust that's been placed in me by 116,000 residents of Mason District, and I'm proud of the work we've done together, and I look forward to doing it for another term. I've been endorsed by a lot of folks. I need to say there's not been any comment about party. I am a Democrat. I have been a Democrat my entire life. I am your Democratic supervisor. And I think that's an important distinction to make. I've been endorsed by the Fairfax Education Association, the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Local, the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club, the Service Employees International, the Realtors, the Northern Virginia Realtors, the Nova Biz PAC, that's the chamber, and the Northern Virginia Labor Federation. I've been endorsed by everybody I've gone after for endorsements, and I'm very pleased that they have the confidence in my experience to continue on the board. But the most important endorsement is the one that by the voters on November 5th. I am Penny Gross, your Mason District Supervisor. I ask for your vote on November 5th so we can keep a good thing going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we conclude, I want to ask each of the candidates to just mention their websites so people could actually go and check your websites for more information, or a Facebook page, for example. Supervisor Gross, do you want to? Of course.
I never get on my website.
Oh, no.
It's www.pennygross.com. That's how you can reach me. In my office, you can reach me at mason@fairfaxcounty.gov. That's the way if you've got county issues. But yes, it's www.pennygross, all one word, .com. Thank you.
And Mr. Aiken.
The website is GaryAiken.org. You can follow me on Twitter at Gary for Mason. You can follow me on Instagram at Gary for Mason. You can follow me on Facebook, Gary for Mason. And my email address is aikeninmason@gmail.com. And my cell phone is 703-829-7879. Take a business card afterwards, and let's stay in touch. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. I do want to recognize one of our board members that came in, Dr. Islam Ramesh, board member at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Please get some water, get some tea, get some snacks, but don't go. We're going to start the school board forum right after this. Thank you very much.